Yo. So a couple of things just to update and one to clarify from our February call till now. The state of Maine is telling us that we should get some updated guidelines from them mid-March sometime. They have a date that they've given us, but I don't want to say it to get people's hopes up or my own because they tend to sometimes lag behind in those things. But we're hoping that mid-March we will get the updated guidelines for 2021. So far, we've been building program based on the 2020 guidelines as kind of our baseline for where to go. So we're hoping to get that mid-March. So the April call or the video links that we put up from the April Zoom call that we do, like this one, which we're going to go with the first Wednesday of the month. The anomaly there is May because that lands on Cinco de Mayo. So I didn't want to get in the way of anybody's family plans or school activities or anything like that. So first Wednesday of April will be the next call, and hopefully we should have some more concrete things to say in that call. So watch for that or the video link. And like I said a few minutes ago, there's a link in the chat box for where we'll be posting those links, like today's call and last month's call is there already. So if you want to bookmark that or find that link, it's near the top of the chat box. All right, so I have one clarification from last time. And for anybody who hasn't heard last time's call, just bear with me. I'll come back to this in just a minute, but mostly so that Heather can bounce if she wants to. Transportation. So there's been a little bit of confusion around this. In the past, we've done a variety of things. This year, we're basically doing two things. One is if your camper is arriving by plane. So if they are international or they're flying from Texas or wherever some of our kids fly in from. So if they're arriving by plane, we will pick them up at the Boston Logan Airport. The schedule on that will be the same as what we've always done. We pick them up the day before incoming day. So opening day for this summer is June 27th. We will pick up the kids flying in on June 26th. We like those to be scheduled between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. ideally. If you can't get a flight kind of in that window of time, please let us know. Contact the office, myself or Dorothy or Adam, and we'll help you navigate that. So we are picking up at Boston only for campers arriving on planes day before incoming day of the session or month that they're attending. And then there's a second category, and this is, I think, where people get confused a little bit. But if your child is attending Brookwoods or Deer Run prior to coming to MRO, and it has to go in that order, and I'll get to that in a minute. But if they're attending Brookwoods or Deer Run first, and then coming to MRO as a part of their month or whatever, we will move that camper from Brookwoods and Deer Run to Moose River Outpost. And we've done this in the past, but so we'll move those campers. What we will not be doing is picking up kids at the airport that are not arriving by plane. And similarly, we will not be moving campers from Brookwoods or Deer Run that are not currently attending Brookwoods and Deer Run. Now, the reason behind this, and I'll discuss this in a minute as well, is just tribes. And I'll define what that means in a second, but we want to establish our tribes as soon as possible. And part of that is not mixing crowds that don't need to mix in a vehicle prior to arriving to camp. So we want as many parents as possible to bring their kids to camp. We realize this is a hurdle for a lot of people, but it's where, with the current guidelines, the way they sit right now, it's where we need to be. So I hope that clarifies. Heather, that's all the new material I have for you. So for everybody else, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and cover some of the stuff that we covered last time. And then I'll get to questions. So guidelines. So we're going with the 2020 guidelines for right now. And then as soon as we have new guidelines from the state, we'll be able to look back. The Maine Summer Camp Association, we're members with that organization, and we sorry, my family's in the room and I can't think and hear things at the same time. Forgive me. Okay, so it's a group of summer camp directors and an organization that works with the state. They're the ones telling us that we will have guidelines mid-March, and they're not anticipating huge difference from 2020. So obviously we do need to wait and see what differences there are. But for now, we're moving ahead with our plans based on the 2020 guidelines. There's a couple of big things in 2020 that are kind of, they're going to change what camp has always looked like to what it looks like this year. And I'll try and do these in a somewhat logical order. Incoming day is a big difference, right? We just talked a little bit about transportation. We're not running the Lexington bus like we have in the past. We're not picking up parents that drop their kids at Brookwoods Deer Run. We're not doing those things. The state doesn't want us to move people around in vehicles unless absolutely necessary. And they don't want us to rent the bus in the same way that we have in the past. They would want us to rent 2 buses, spread everybody out into opposite seats, install plexiglass, all kinds of stuff. And that all becomes extremely cost prohibitive for us. So we're not going to be doing that. Incoming day, what we anticipate that looking like right now is parents arriving with their camper on property. The state is telling us to curb drop everybody. Don't even have parents get out of cars. We don't like this plan. We think it's important for parents to meet the counselors and to see the property. So the one thing that we will be doing that would be different from previous years is parents won't be going in buildings, especially camper cabins. We want to keep the population that's in that cabin, just the people that are going to be living there. So parents can arrive. We'll have a health screening for everybody in the car that's getting out on property. Everybody will need to be masked up. They can go meet the counselor. The counselor will help the camper move their things into the cabin. Mom and dad are welcome to go with them to the swim test at the waterfront, come back to the cabin, see the property, and then take off from there. We will have a bathroom available because we know it's a long drive for folks, but you should anticipate not going into buildings. So not into the dining hall, not into our chapel area, and not into the camper cabins. So that's a big difference for us, but we feel like it'll still let us help us accomplish parents being able to meet counselors, because we feel like that's really important. Talk a little bit about testing, because I think it relates to incoming day. We're going to ask everybody, the plan right now is to ask everybody to have their camper provide a negative COVID test prior to arriving. The American Camping Association is another association that we belong to, and their medical consultants are telling us that we should ask families to have that, provide that negative result between day 7 before arriving and 72 hours to make sure you can actually get the results. And we're going to ask for a PCR, not a rapid. So kind of put that in the back of your head as a thing to plan on doing. And then we're waiting to see what the actual guidelines are on this, but we're planning on asking parents as well to just kind of choose somewhat cautious activities for their camper in that window of time from just a few days before they test until they test and then arrive at camp. So that's one test that we think will happen. There's a second test that might happen. And again, we're waiting on final guidelines from the state and a little bit of our internal process to decide what we feel is best. But so you should know something we're entertaining is a test for the entire camp population on day 5. we'll do this on property and in-house, and it'll be another PCR, which we'll send out. We're going to work with a lab in the state of Maine that gets us pretty quick results. And this will allow us to kind of catch something if it's there, hopefully, and then not let it spread. So you should anticipate that when you're talking with your campers about what camp would be like. There's a good chance we will have a test on day 5. And I'll clarify, I just saw this question pop up. It's a good question, a PCR. So I'll use the language that we use a little bit in our office. There's the like brain tickle, right? The one that is very deep. And then there's the mid nasal one. And our plan is to set up with a lab that will allow us to do the mid nasal one. There's a trend right now in medicine that they're not recommending the deep nasal for pediatrics anymore. And I know that a lot of our kids are in the teenage range, but we really want to just set up one thing that works for our whole population. So our plan is to set up with a PCR. So it's not antigen. It's testing for the actual virus, but is not the one that touches your frontal lobe. So that's testing that we anticipate. Anything above or beyond that, the way the guidelines sit now is if somebody becomes sick. So if somebody becomes sick at camp and has COVID symptoms, we might choose to test that camper. And that again will be a PCR, and we'll send it out. We'll have to quarantine that camper until we get that negative result back. So we have a building that we're going to set aside for this. I'm actually in the works of having a second nurse on site so that we can handle kind of both a sick population and a healthy population at the same time. And in best case scenario, that result comes back negative and the camper enters the camp population and life goes on. If it were to come back positive, let me back up one step. If a camper needs a COVID test, we decide, our nurse staff decide this person needs a COVID test and we're going to send it out. Their cabin will enter a different schedule where it is just their cabin kind of moving through camp activities. So they won't be not doing stuff at camp. They'll still be doing the camp things. They'll just be doing it as a cabin unit until we get that negative back, and then life can go on. If the result comes back as a positive, two things will need to happen. One, parents will need to arrive within 24 hours is what we're going to recommend to pick up their camper. Now, Herbert, I can see your expression, and yes, it will be a greater amount of time. So we're going to say 24 to 48 hours, but we're asking for 24. Someone will need to arrive and pick up the sick camper that has a positive COVID and take them home. We won't be hanging on to a 14-day quarantine camper for that time period or to help them progress through that healthily. We want them to go home at that point. So anybody who's flying in, this is a big risk for you or something that you have to figure out how to navigate. Maybe you have family or very, very good friends in the US, or maybe it doesn't fit for this year. That's something that you guys will have to navigate. But even if your kid flies in, we're going to ask for them to be picked up within 24 hours if they get a COVID positive while at camp. If we get the COVID positive, so the camper gets picked up, that's one. The second thing that's going to happen is we're going to test that whole cabin at that point. And we'll keep them on their isolated schedule where they're moving through camp activities together, test the whole cabin. Anybody who has a positive goes home. And anybody who doesn't stays. So that's the plan if we have COVID at camp. Adam, I've been going a bit here. Do you want me to stop and cover something?
Yes. So let's just stick on testing since we're talking about testing.
Yep.
So just to clarify, yes, if international parents, Europe, and even this applies as well to even like people, like you said, from Texas or anyone flying in.
Yeah.
The answer is kind of what we're saying, and I know is hard to, or like difficult to wrap your mind around, because picking your kid up within 24 to 48 hours might be very difficult, but that is the policy that we've come up with. So yeah, any parent from Europe, Texas, or otherwise will have to arrange a pickup for their camper. So that could, like Seth had said, that could be a friend or somebody that you trust in the States to pick them up from MRO. So just to clarify that is how we're doing it this year.
Yeah, and we realize that's a huge hurdle and maybe a deal breaker for families. Just that's how we're going to need to handle a positive COVID at camp. We'll be doing the same for any staff that we have. They'll have to leave within 24 hours. And part of that is the reason we're not going to move a positive COVID camper around, like put them in a car and meet somewhere or anything like that, is because then I would lose that staff member for 10 to 14 days, depending on what the guidelines are. And that was the deal breaker last season with not being able to operate. It was chewing through, even to get a test in our part of Maine at the time was going to require a car ride to Skowhegan, which is 2 hours, and then bring them back. And then you lose that staff member. And we just couldn't get around chewing through the whole staff in a short period of time. So yeah, it's a big deal.
And Laura, you had posed the question, are international campers flying in? I mean, the answer would be yes, we're allowing that. International campers can fly in. There's transportation to the Boston Logan Airport where we would pick up an international camper and bring them to Moose River Outpost. Again, contingent upon the same rules apply for testing for domestic as well as international campers. So the campers will get tested, or the child will get tested, what did we say, 5 to 7 days prior to arriving to camp. We'll see it's a negative. They'll limit their mobility within those days prior to camp, and then we'll pick them up at the Boston Logan Airport.
Yep. I had a thought and then it escaped me. You ready for me to move on, Adam, or you want to stay here for a minute?
Just one quick question, Seth. If you have I don't know if you have the numbers in your head or right in front of you, or an estimate.
Yeah.
We had a question just about how many kids are we anticipating using transportation just for the first session?
Whether that's a good question. I don't know the number off the top of my head. I do know that it is less than previous years. And I also know that there are families that have their kids registered right now, especially international, that their countries aren't even open yet to the US, or the US isn't open to that country yet. So the registration still sits there. And if everything goes through, we will pick those kids up. However, at the moment, if camp had to happen today, they wouldn't be able to come. So I could look back at that, and Adam, make a note for me. That's something we'll make sure we have on the April call. But I'll have to just look at that in detail to know what that real number is, because there's a difference between kids that are flying domestically and the international crowd that we have signed up right now. I can say this, that the American Camping Association, they had, in the US, they had 90,000 campers last summer in 2020 at accredited ACA camps throughout the US. And in those 90,000 campers, there were a total of 30 cases of COVID in the US at camps. 30 campers. There were also some additional staff that got sick, but 30 campers tested positive at some point in their camp experience. So in the camping world, there's a couple of things that we think are in our favor. One, we do a lot of stuff outside. and it's kids, so that it's not the highest risk population. So I know that the world is not in the same place right now as it was last summer as far as the amount of sick people out there. There's also, with the vaccine, hope that in general populations will trend to the healthier side, and especially as spring comes and people get back outdoors, especially here in the Northeast. Yesterday was not a fun day to be outside. But all that to say, there's a fair amount of positivity in the camping world that we can have healthy camps this next summer and a fairly low amount of COVID cases. So that's our hope, that would trend the same. Let me talk about tribes a little bit. Are we okay to go to that?
Yep. Actually, we had a question about that. So I'll let you run through everything. And if there's an outstanding question, we'll follow up.
Great. So the word cohort can mean a lot of things. And so we're not using that one at camp. But when I say tribe, you could think cohort. The state wants us to do things in as small an exposure as possible. And so Adam and I have spent a fair amount of time looking at the camp program to say, what could that look like for us, where kids could still come and have a Moose River Outpost experience, but maybe not have the entire population mixed together. Now, currently, the state also has a mandate where we cannot gather more than 50 people at any given time. So our dining hall, for example, normally could fit all 96 kids plus the staff the counselors in that space. We won't be doing that this summer because we have to keep it to 50. So I've done two things. We're holding down the enrollment to 84 kids. So we're going to split into two tribes. Each one will have 42 campers in it, and then the 8 staff. That gets us our number of 50. And we're going to split by age. So our youngest 4 cabins, 2 boys, 2 girls, and our oldest 4 cabins, 2 boys, 2 girls. Those will be our 2, what we're calling tribes. And they will navigate an independent schedule where they don't end up in the same place at the same time as the other tribe. So they'll have different meals, they'll have different chapels, they'll have different free times. They will sign up for activities within their tribe and go to activities with other people from their tribe, but not from a different tribe. So it's a complicated schedule to run from our end, but on paper anyways, it works. And we actually have a staff guy here in New Hampshire at Brookwoods who has run a schedule like this at a camp that he's worked at before. He's relatively new to us. He's been here 2 years now. And so we know it works from his end. So he's working with us, Adam and I, to make sure that we have a solid plan to run this independent schedule where the kids don't overlap. So 2 separate tribes. A common question we've gotten is from parents that have kids in both age categories. Will they see each other at camp? Yes. Will they do an activity together? Probably not. I think they'll still see each other in passing, and they'll see each other in a context where we'll probably be outdoors and we'll still be using masks. Especially if our 6-foot proximity is a thing that can't happen. So I think the tribes will still see each other. They might not sit together and chat for a long period of time at free time, like maybe we've done in the past. But they'll still be at camp together, and it's not that big of a camp. So I think they'll still see each other occasionally. We anticipate running most of our activities within this independent schedule. And our plan is just to modify a few things so that people like Adam and I, we drive the boat, we teach fishing, we do a variety of different things. And we recognize that we are the leak in the leaky bucket, right? Because we're going to be moving between tribes. So staff in this category will be extra vigilant about our hand washing, our mask wearing, especially if we're in less than 6 feet proximity to people. And most of the activities can still happen in a normal way. A simple example of something that we're going to change. We used to load up the boat full of people and we go out and we do the activity and we come back when the activity is done. We'll probably just have everybody on the dock and we'll stay closer in that area. If you've been to our property, right in front of the water, right in front, there's plenty of space there to do what we do. We'll tow one person, come back to the dock, they drop off, new person comes out, and away we go again. So that kind of stuff makes an easy change. There's a few things in our normal MRO experience that have to change as a part of this that won't happen this summer. So one is rafting. The state doesn't, with the current guidelines, doesn't want us to enter some other population with our population. And so we can't go whitewater rafting. So that gets tabled for summer 2021. Trying to think what else. There's an off-site rock climbing trip that's happened in the past that we staffed by Adventure Bound as well. That one won't be able to happen. And then the state is asking for backpacking and canoeing trips to have a maximum of 10 people on it. And so that doesn't really work for a cabin where we're anticipating putting 11 people in. So our plan is to modify that, and we won't go off property for our trip program. We're still planning on doing like a camp out is how I'm describing it, how I think about it. It'll happen on property. One of the benefits of having a huge property is we have a couple of remote campsites already, and we're going to add a couple more, and we'll still do our trip program as campouts on property where they'll load up on gear and they'll backpack out to their remote campsite, stay there for the evening, cook dinner, breakfast, and then return in the morning. So it's a similar schedule to what we've done before, a little bit shorter, but it still has that cabin bonding experience of going on a camp out. It'll just be on property. Those are the big things that tribes and activities affect. Adam, questions on that stuff?
Yeah, two kind of specific ones, and I know we're still working through. We have the big picture figured out. Some of the specifics we still have questions about, but so questions on some of like the capture the flag type activities, some of those evening game activities that we've done. What does that look like? Yep. As well as the bonfire, opening bonfire, closing bonfire, stuff like that.
Right. So evening program right now the plan is to have that be within the tribe. We already have a fair amount of things that we do that are just the cabin. So we have cabin night, we have guys night, girls night. And our plan is to do the evening activities inside of tribes. So when I started sketching out the daily schedule with this split schedule, in order to accomplish that, it actually adds a fourth activity period where we may do some of our instructional areas, the mountain biking, the skeet shooting, 22s, archery, these things, crafts. It's going to add one more period per day. So your kids are actually going to have more opportunity to do camp activities than in a normal year. We may find that we like this schedule in a future year, and we may find that we keep doing it. So where was I going with that? Evening activities the plan is to do that within the tribe, and the tribe is a max of 50 people. So it's 4 cabins in the tribe, and those cabins will be somewhere between 11 and 12. I can't tell you right now how many kids will be in there. It'll either be 11 or be 12. And I'm going to hold each age down to those 42 kids, and then we'll split up by age. That's how we normally do it, is we break cabins by age. So 4 cabins to a tribe, they'll do evening activities together. And Adam, what was the second part of that?
I get you can kind of wrap them both up in one, but the second one was the bonfires, opening bonfire and closing bonfire.
Yeah, right now the plan is to do that in the tribes, and something I'm hoping to see in the guidelines that are supposed to come out this month is that there is an allowance for like our end of session campfire. We would rather do that as one big group, outdoors, spread out, so that there's actual physical space between the two tribes. We would have staggered arrival and departure times to keep the population separate. I think there's a way to do that. With the current guidelines, that would be a deviation from the current guidelines. So the way it sits right now, we're going to do things in tribe. But I have small hope that maybe there's a way to do some of this, especially closing campfire. I feel like it's a better program when it's all together. So we'll see. But for the most part, it's tribes.
In relationship to, just since we're on the hot topic of activities, I'll keep this going. Yep. Question on wild. So we will be doing off-site stuff for wild. That's going to happen. What we're not allowed to do is use outside providers. So the rafting down the Kennebec won't happen. We've come up with an alternative that we can staff ourselves to continue sort of the flow of the mother trip that we have. But we are allowed to go off-site within specific number boundaries.
So we've held the enrollment of wild down to 8 instead of the normal 12, so that we can continue to go on these overnight trips and be off property. And like Adam said, the outside provider trips have come off the schedule, so we're not going to be doing the whitewater kayaking trip that we would normally do, because that's an outside provider. And then rafting and rock climbing comes off that schedule as well. But like Adam said, I think we have a pretty good plan on how to still get some of the fun in there. It might involve me in a canoe with a whole bunch of wild kids at fish flow on the Kennebec a portion of the Kennebec. So we'll see. But yeah, the plan is to do as much of the cool stuff as we can do. And then we've adjusted that enrollment to be able to do that.
And then in terms of our on-site overnights that we're doing for our typical campers.
Yep.
We have a question about hiking up Bald and what that would look like. Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility, and something we plan on doing for the older kids, because that can be done from camp. Wild does this early on in their time there. We have a remote site that's kind of over that way, and it's a big day, because they'll put on backpacks, they'll go to the remote site, drop packs, take like a day's worth of food and water, and then go up Bald Mountain from there and return. So yes, that will still happen, probably just for the older kids. But yeah, we're going to do it.
All right. That's it for the activity questions. Oh, hold on one second.
So Adam, I'm through my outline, so we can just keep rolling on questions.
Great. So the age for those hiking up Bald, we had said the older cabins.
Yeah, most likely 15, 16, 17.
Yeah. And then we had an earlier question on vaccination recommendations for our counselors. Are we doing that? Are we not doing that?
We're waiting to see yet what the guidelines are recommending. There's a lot of our staff have said that they're already either scheduled or anticipating being able to get vaccinated before coming. We have not required it. I don't know that we will require it. I think that is I'm not sure we want to go there. There's a lot of chatter amongst our full-time staff down here of what we should do on that. And I don't have a hard and fast yet. And then there's a little bit of a scheduling, depending on where you live. So for here in New Hampshire, we're being told that myself, like Adam and I, could potentially get vaccinated because we're going to be working with children. The question is, can we get that done before we have to go up to Maine in mid-May? And right now that's just really unclear as far as what's going to be available here in New Hampshire. Now I know much younger staff and even campers in the Massachusetts area that are old enough to qualify for the Pfizer vaccine that's out there. And they are anticipating getting vaccinated prior to coming to camp. And I think that's great. So it's a big, I don't know quite yet. And we'll see what happens. So yeah, I'm not sure on that one yet.
And just to revisit the capture the flag question, or like those big group activities, we anticipate being able to do that within the tribes specifically. So that group of 50, those oldest 4 cabins or youngest 4 cabins, we'll be having time for those group evening activities like capture the flag.
Yeah, Adam and I haven't talked about this one yet, but I have in my head, there's still a way to do color wars in a similar way that we've done it in the past, where they'll do the activities within their tribe and they'll be split into colors within their tribe, but both green teams from both tribes will be working together to see who's actually winning. So we'll still paint the antlers a green or yellow, red, blue, whatever it is. I think there's a way to keep doing some of the stuff and have it feel bigger than just the tribe. I don't know if that makes sense, but so that's our hope. We that's the details that we have to work out between now and summer.
And Seth, can you revisit the policy that we have for any child that tests positive at camp and how that then affects their cabin?
Right. Okay. So if they test positive while at camp, the parents will need to pick up that child within 24 to 48 hours or arrange transportation, I guess is how I should say it. And then we will test the whole cabin. And that cabin will already be on a schedule. Think of it as a third schedule. So tribe number 1 and tribe number 2 have their independent schedules. If somebody tests positive, we'll pull that cabin out of the tribe and they'll have their own schedule where they're doing activities as a cabin. So they'll already be independent from the camp population. And we will test that whole cabin and then go from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the specific question was on, if a child tests positive. So 24 to 48 hours, they'll have to be picked up. We have a quarantine cabin available, but the idea is, and what we are unable to do is hold them for the however many days and bring them back into the camp population. We're not able to do that this summer at MRO, unfortunately.
Right. Now, I'll say this. The one exception to that might be we're running a 6-week wild program for the kids that were wild ones last year. And so they'll be at camp for a very long period of time. So in that small population of a max of 8, we might entertain the thought of keeping a kid for the 14 days or whatever the state's going to recommend. And then once they're free and clear and symptom free and can get a negative, they could go back into the wild population when they're healthy. That's the only category. Other than that, small population, it's a 24-hour or 48-hour pickup for a positive camper.
And then just to be a little bit more specific on the tribes, we're gonna have 3 tribes, right? So that's the oldest cabins, the youngest cabins, and then support staff. The youngest cabins will be 2 boys cabins and 2 girls cabins. That's typically 11, 12, 13 years of age. And then the other camper tribe will be the oldest 2 boys and oldest 2 girls cabins, 14, 15, 16 years of age, typically.
Yep. And then just because I know we have Wild in the room too. So Wild one is its own tribe. Wild 6-week hybrid is its own tribe. So there's a lot going on and a lot of like separate populations. But yeah, that's the breakdown. Two on main camp, two camper tribes, and the third tribe that we see on main camp is the support staff.
Did I miss any questions? Maybe back if there's any questions. Yeah.
Herbert.
Thanks. Yeah. First of all, it's my first call tonight, so I apologize in advance if I ask questions that have been covered before. But first of all, very generic question: do campers have to wear masks at all times in the camp?
That's a good. No, let me lay that one out. I meant to do this earlier, so thank you for bringing this up. The way the state views our groupings, a cabin is a household or a family. And just like in your family, you don't wear masks in your household. The state is not recommending that anybody sleep with a mask on. We're going to increase our airflow in our cabins. So when they're indoors in the cabin space, the windows will be open all the time and fans blowing the air through the cabin to change that air out as much as possible. When they're with just their cabin, or when Wild is with just Wild one, they will not have to wear a mask in that population. That's their family, that's their household. As soon as some other population comes to that cabin or the tribe gets together, then yes, if we don't have 6 feet of space, then they'll need to wear masks. I'll give you an example of what this looks like. Let's say kids are hanging out on the front lawn, this is a common thing during their free time. Some people will be playing Frisbee, some people will be on the slack line, some people are just chilling. If they're closer than 6 feet, we need to wear masks. If they are throwing the Frisbee and there's 20 feet between them, no, they don't need to wear that mask. They can drop it off their ear, put it in their pocket, whatever. But as soon as they get back, now they need to add the mask again. So if they're just...
But it's not being inside or outside. It's really depending on distance.
Correct. Right now, the way the guidelines sit, it's the distance. I would love for it to be the outside factor. But right now, no, it's the 6 feet.
Okay. And to get back to the 24 to 48 hours, I'm picking up a positive child. Obviously, it's even more difficult for international campers like my children, because there was no way we as a parent could fly into the US in such short notice. Do you know if health insurances, for example, would be able to come and pick up if that's covered by the insurance? Would they be allowed to come and pick up the child at the camp and bring it back to the airport for being sent back to France? Do you know that or not?
I don't know. I think there's a couple of hard parts with that, especially international. Right now, in order to get on an international flight from the US, you need to provide a negative COVID in a short period of time prior to that flight. So a sick camper would not be able to get on the flight and fly back. As far as somebody who can pick up the camper, whoever you as the parent designate to pick up the camper will be who that we release the camper to. So if there's a way to work that out through your insurance that you as a parent are comfortable with, and you provide us the name and license number of the individual that's coming to pick up your camper, and that's who we release your camper to, that works for us.
Okay. I had another question, just skipped as well. And regarding transportation, but I think you covered it already, but what we had in mind was my children were to arrive a week prior to camp to visit some cousins who live in Boston.
Yep.
But that's, if they do that, if I understood you correctly, they would have to be taken to MRO. They couldn't be taken to Brookwoods and take the shuttle from there to MRO, right?
Correct. Your cousins would need to bring them up to camp. Yes.
Right. Okay. Let's make it more complicated. Okay. And last question. It comes back to me. At the moment, my son Alban and my daughter Colombe are coming to the camp. They're international. At the moment, they cannot enter the US.
Correct.
So you've been very kind to allocate them, some spot. But I guess, have you set up a limit in terms of date until you would say, well, sorry, they cannot still enter the US, and we need to give that, the possibility for another child in the US who could join the camp? Have you set up a date?
We have not. That's something, if our enrollment looks like it's getting close to being full, that's something that we might need to visit. But right now, no. And Adam, let's note that we're going to ask this in our team meeting the next time we meet. I'm writing. So no, we haven't done that yet.
Okay, and is there any announcement that is scheduled from the U.S. government regarding opening borders or anything? Any schedule at all, which is being?
I have not heard anything. No, but I'll ask our guy that covers that. I have not heard anything yet.
Okay. I think that's all for my questions for today, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Cruz. Those are good questions. And I know it's a lot harder for internationals, campers. Seth, we got a couple other questions here. So the first one is, have we thought through, or what does it look like if we have a counselor or the cabin leader tests positive and then will therefore have to be removed? What are the implications then for the campers? What are our kind of contingency plans on that?
Yeah, totally. So let me back up one step and then I'll answer that. So counselors come to camp, excuse me, 2 weeks before any camper arrives. They will also be tested at home before arriving. And then we're also going to test that population on day 5. So we anticipate starting first session with healthy counselors. Now, if a counselor was to get a positive, then similar things happen as our campers. So the counselor will need to leave and go away and get healthy, and then potentially come back, depending on when this happens in the summer. And then obviously the next question is, how do we staff that cabin, right? So in our kitchen staff and our maintenance staff, we will have people of the right age and the right caliber and cross-trained during our training time, so that they could come in as a counselor if we need them to cover a cabin or whatever. So that's our plan. Same procedure as if a camper gets COVID, a counselor pops COVID, we're going to test the whole cabin, and the counselor leaves, and then we kind of go from there. And the goal with all this is to make sure that we don't have an outbreak. If we have an outbreak at camp, the state will come in, shut us down, everyone goes home, and that would be just awful. Bad for the kids, bad for camp, it would be bad for everybody. So that's the plan.
And then, so in terms of our hikes, whether that's wild, the older campers going up the mountain, or even just the cabins hiking to their overnight site on property, will they need to wear masks?
No, because it will be just their cabin or their family, if you want to think of it that way. They will, when they're with just their cabin, they will not need to wear masks. And we're also going to cross-train our counselors. We did this in 2019, so this is not new for us, but we're going to cross-train our counselors as the trip leaders. So they'll have the right medical certifications, they'll have the right training, they'll know how to deal with weather and fires and cooking and all these things. And they will lead those trips so that it is just their cabin. There will not be an outside trip staff coming into that cabin. It'll just be that cabin.
And I believe this question has to do with campers, correct me if I'm wrong, but campers will have to be tested 5 to 7 days prior to coming to camp. And then you will show us that it's a negative test when you get the results back, and then the camper or your child will limit their exposure prior to actually arriving at camp, so that it's as safe as they can be when they get to camp. So that's 5 to 7 days they'll have to be tested before coming to camp.
Correct.
And then another question on wild. So the wild 1-2 combined, I believe that would be our 6-week wild program. The question is about sort of personal time slots. So if they have school assignments or anything like that, is there built-in personal time during that time for like school assignments?
Is there built-in time? No, not really. There's also no access to internet for that camper population. Or any of our camper populations. The days, I want to say this sensitively, you might in that program find yourself, if you're a camper, with some free time, but since as a camp, we have to program and know where every kid is at every moment of every day. So we fill the days right up, and the schedule stays very full. So no, we haven't put in time or big chunks of time for that. Is that fair, Adam?
Yeah, I'd say so. Between that and also just sort of the intentionality that we put behind specifically, well, all of our programs, but also specifically the WILD program, as it's a leadership program. I think there's a lot of intentionality put into our Bible study lessons, our leadership training lessons, group development lessons, as well as just their camping and tripping experience and exposure. I think we put a lot of intentionality behind that to offer growth to the participants. And so that in and of itself too takes up the majority of the days. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
So let me just double check. I think that's it. I'll do a quick run through if anybody else, if I missed anything. Yeah.
Mr. Cruz, you want to just go ahead?
Yeah, sorry, I have one last question.
That's fine.
Vaccination is a bit obscure in Europe, well, at least in France, started, but okay. If children could get vaccinated prior to camp, I guess they will still need the negative COVID test before entering, even if they had vaccination. No?
Right. So if your child or a staff member has been vaccinated prior to coming to camp, no. The way we understand
we don't need
things,
the COVID test.
No COVID test.
Okay. And would there be treated differently if one of their campers, well, family or tribe, is positive? Would that be treated differently as the rest of the group, or would they stay with in the same kind of family tribe?
They would stay with the same family. They would not have to get a test at camp because they've been vaccinated, and then we would just see what happens. So I'm thinking on my feet, so don't hold me to any of this. But these are good questions. Adam, you write a note that we'll come up with a standard on this. But let's say, well, our preference would be yes, to keep them with that family. these are the counselors that they know, that mom and dad got to meet ideally, that the trust is built with. And so as long as that is a healthy population, we want them to stay with that population. In the event where what I'm thinking is there an event where we would have a camper move to another cabin? And we really try not to do this if at all possible, mostly for just trust and relationships. We've done it before. We did it in 2019 for a variety of reasons that I won't cover here, but it's not outside of the realm of what we would consider, but it is not our first preference.
Okay. And regarding masks, would they be allowed to not to wear any mask on the camp?
No. So this is one that, unless something new comes out in the guidelines, vaccination does not give you a get out of jail free card for everything. We wish it did, but it doesn't right now. They will still have to do all of the things. We're calling them MPIs, the non-pharmaceutical interventions that the whole camp population needs to do until the government here comes out and says, no, actually, when you're vaccinated, it is a get out of jail free card. That hasn't happened yet. So for now, no, behavior stays the same. The thing it gets you out of is testing, which might be worth it. But yeah.
I typically don't like to exist in the realms of like where we're trending, or like, well, we hear that things are going to ease up. You know, we have to deal with solids, like what, you know, very specifics. What are the tangibles? But if there is a trend, there's definitely a handful of states that are easing masks, and there's been talk. So we've heard a little bit about mask mandates going away for certain states. Can't tell you if that's going to be Maine, and I can't tell you if that's going to come back.
And we can't tell you if that will affect the camping guidelines, yeah. Right? Because that's the real kicker for us is we have to tread lightly on anything that we choose to deviate from, because if the state, absolute worst case scenario, the state comes and takes our license to operate, that's a big deal. So we want to make it as safe for your kids as possible. We want to make it as fun for your kids as possible. And we're going to do our best to do those things inside of the guidelines that we're given. So that's what we're working on. Great.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions pop up. Does anybody else have any thoughts based on what we've talked about? Any questions?
So let's do this. We've hit the 1 hour mark. So if anybody wants to stay on and ask another question, go for it. And if not, thanks so much for joining us. And we'll put the link for this up on that webpage that Adam had in the chat box. And yeah, if you want to look back there for updates, go for it. And then we hope to have some more concrete things in our April call. As long as the state does go ahead and get us the guidelines that we're hearing we may get this month. So thanks everybody, really appreciate you, and carving out time for this. It's fun to see you. Alvin, or Mr. Cruz, tell Alvin I said hello, and
thanks, I will.
Yeah, great.
And thanks a lot to all of you. You're doing a super job. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope we can make it happen this year again. Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.